Hi, I'm Dr. Katie Wheat. I'm Head of Higher Education Engagement at Vitae, and you're listening to the Academy's Developing Practice podcast.
Hello, it's lovely to meet you. Can you tell us a bit about your background and how you arrived at the position that you're in now at Vitae?
Yes, hello, it's nice to meet you too. Thank you for having me. I've been at Vitae for nearly 6 years now, and before that I was a postdoctoral researcher in psychology based at the Maastricht University, and before that I was a PhD at University of York.
Right, okay, great. So that's a lot of experience to bring to the current role.
It definitely helps having had some time as a researcher to understand what it's like, what the pressures are, though, you know, the world changes really quickly, so 6 years old experience is already quite old, but I really make an effort to stay connected through researcher network, through going out to conferences, to kind of keep abreast of how things are now.
That's great. So could you just explain to us, kind of in layman's terms, what is the Concordat?
Okay, so in full, it's the Concordat to support the career development of researchers, and is commonly known as the Researcher Development Concordat. And fundamentally, it's an agreement between the employers of researchers and the research funders about the expectations for professional development and the employment conditions of researchers working in the UK.
Great. So can you just explain to us a little bit in terms of the role you're performing now, and then how that's kind of resulted in the new Concordat?
Do you mean my role at Vitae, what I do in my day job?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, my position is Head of Higher Education Engagement, which essentially means I am responsible for Vitae's membership programme. Mm-hmm. So we're an organisation, a non-profit programme focusing on the professional development of researchers. One of the ways we fund ourselves is through university and other organisation memberships. So I have a role in that programme, and through our mission we have a particular interest in improving the employment conditions and improving the professional development conditions for researchers internationally, but we have a big focus in the UK given that's where we're based. So a complementary part of my role is interacting with different stakeholder groups, researchers, funders, universities, managers of researchers, and they're the key groups represented in the Concordat.
Brilliant. So just thinking a bit about my experience, previously I've worked as a head of department, I've had researchers in my department, and there are some really unique challenges, I think, aren't there, to researchers. So can you just talk to us a little bit about what you think those challenges are, and how you think the Concordat has worked to support or alleviate some of those challenges?
One of the biggest persistent challenges for researchers is insecurity of employment. Mm-hmm. Most researchers, the vast majority in the UK, are working on a series of fixed-term contracts. Those contracts can be as short as 6 months or shorter, but you know, even contracts of what you might call a meaningful length might only be 2 years or 3 years, maybe 5 years. So that's one of the challenges which as a sector, by which I mean the funders, the universities and so on, operating in higher education and the academic arena, as a sector we've agreed that's one of the common challenges that we really have to do better on. We've made some progress, we being the sector. Year on year, the proportion of fixed-term contracts is going down, but it's really, you know, percentage points at a time, not a tipping point to say, you know, actually the majority are now on continuing stable positions.
Yeah, so just in your conversations with researchers, why is that such a big challenge to them, these fixed term contracts? What are they actually saying to you in terms of, oh, you know, I can't do this any longer? What are the key things that are challenging them in that respect?
I mean, there are so many challenges wrapped up in this kind of instability of employment. Partly in the research itself, you know, it's difficult to sustain momentum, to build a publishing track record. It takes a lot of time to keep on applying for jobs and to keep on applying for grants. So just for the health of the research base and the quality of the research, a certain element of stability is valuable. And then on the personal side, of course, if you're having a series of short-term contracts, and that probably interacts with a time where you might be thinking about settling down, starting a family, maybe buying a house, you know, building some links into a community. If through no choice of your own, you're moving continually cities to try and chase the next contract, it doesn't really give you roots in the community or even roots in the university. But having said all of that, there is real value to mobility. So one of the things that I think is really important is it's not just about getting rid of fixed term contracts. It's about having a healthier way to support mobility, and that might be mobility across sectors, might be mobility through different positions within the same institution. It might be mobility of discipline, but all of it done in a way that gives the individual researcher a lot more autonomy and a lot more agency, control over how frequently they move and where they move to. I think that's the crux of it. It's not just whether your contract is fixed term or open. It's do you have the freedom of your own movement.
Brilliant. And then just in terms of that one challenge that we focused on there, how seriously do you think institutions will take the Concordat in terms of kind of the directives or the suggestions that have been made?
I think institutions will take it really seriously. All of the obligations that they have within the Concordat now, as opposed to the previous iteration, any institution that wants to take part can do so by being a signatory. And signatories are all at the organisational level. So, for example, University of Liverpool's Vice-Chancellor would sign on behalf of all of the members of the university, and that then cascades a certain set of obligations and expectations. So the university has to produce an action plan, and they have to report on that action plan internally every year and make that report public. So it gives a certain amount of transparency and accountability to say that even if an institution isn't making progress, they should at least have actions that support future progress. And if they don't have any actions, then researchers have a mechanism to say, you've signed this, why aren't you doing something?
Brilliant.
Yeah, so there's that challenge then. So they can therefore challenge the institution based on the action plan.
Exactly,
Brilliant.
yeah.
Okay. So one thing that particularly stands out from the new Concordat is the interlinked responsibilities of funders, research institutions and researchers in relation to researchers' rights and needs. Do you think that's the key development?
Yes, I think it's absolutely one of the key changes this time. In the previous iteration, it was, I would say, partly a partnership expectation between the universities and the researchers. Both those groups had clear expectations set out. But now it goes even further to say the funders have their own set of expectations and the managers of researchers have their own set too. So each of the different organisation types and groups of individuals working together in sometimes interlinked responsibilities and sometimes their own unique responsibilities should mean that everybody's actions are complementing the way forward. Everybody's pulling together in a direction that, as a Concordat, we've collectively agreed this is the direction that we want to go in. So it gives a clear kind of roadmap for everyone to say, all of my actions and all of the actions of the members of my institution through their contracts or through their grant funding conditions, everything pushes together in the same direction.
So just thinking about something that really stood out to me in terms of the Concordat is a real focus on the mental health and the well-being of the researchers, which may be quite unique in terms of this iteration of the Concordat. And I just wondered if you wanted to reflect on that a bit. You've already spoken about insecure employment and the effect that can have. But do you think that this is like a really key development in terms of thinking about the well-being of the researchers and trying to protect that?
Yes, I do think it's a really important and new element of the Concordat. You mentioned there whether it's unique, and I think it's important to note that it's not unique to the Concordat.
Great.
That there's a growing concern and awareness of some of the challenges sector-wide across universities, through the whole university system, and beyond, that we as employers, as all of the members of the research system, need to take care of our own well-being and mental health, and we need to take care of the well-being and mental health particularly of people working underneath us as employees or as students, but for everybody, for our peers. And I think that's a really positive development in this Concordat, is that focus on the culture and the environment as a whole. That's something that it's very current. Many different organisations are trying to make improvements in this area, and the Concordat is one piece of the puzzle in making sure that all of us working in the research environment, researchers, academic staff, everybody who's playing a part, benefits from an improved culture and improved opportunities to protect their well-being and mental health.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's obviously something that's being talked about a lot within the sector. If I reflect back on my work, even with undergraduates, there's a lot of talk now about appropriately supporting students. I'm a bit scared that it just becomes rhetoric. We know we're supposed to say this, but what actual actions can be put in place to ensure there is the appropriate amount of support in terms of people's, or in this case, researchers' well-being?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's so important that those words on the page are more than just words. They really have to come to life in the way that institutions operate, and that can take many forms. Some of the suggestions within the Concordat itself are, for example, looking at workload management, giving managers of people the skills to manage those people, the time to develop those skills, and building into, for example, appraisals, the opportunity to value and recognise those kinds of skills, so that everybody who is responsible for people feels supported in that role, and feels valued for that role.
Brilliant, thank you.
It sounds like the Concordat is really trying to change the culture, and in particular in culture in higher education institutions. In fact, the section on the environment and culture in the Concordat places the employer-employee responsibilities side by side. So would you say that the new Concordat means, well, what would you say the new Concordat means for a higher education institution?
So many things. First of all, any particular higher education institution has to make the decision at the very top of their organisation, are they going to sign or not? And that already gives a certain message to the sector and to their employees. We've signed this, and now we'll be making steps towards implementing it. So it doesn't happen overnight. Just because an organisation signs doesn't mean that they'll be implementing
huge change straight away.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about continued progress, and so I think that's ultimately what it means for an organisation, is taking some time to reflect on how could this look for the best in our organisation, how are we going to make everybody aware that they also, by virtue of us signing, have some responsibilities and expectations, and how are we going to support all of the members of our institution to play their part.
Including the researchers then?
Including the researchers, yeah.
It's not just something that's done for them or to them.
No, absolutely. And the UK Research Staff Association is one of the members of the Concordat Strategy Group, which is the group that, on behalf of the sector, manage and oversee the implementation. So researchers have a voice there, and in this new version, all signatories are expected to incorporate the researcher voice into their implementation plan. So as well as raising awareness, they should really be gathering the views and involving researchers in the shape of the implementation. It's very much collective action rather than any one group doing something to another group.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, okay. As a developer, I was really interested to read the section in the Concordat talking about the recommendation for 10 days pro rata per year for professional development. That was really interesting to me. So what impact do you foresee that having in terms of maybe, I think what I'm picking up from you is getting away from this, what can we get from researchers, how can we take from them, but actually how can we have that balance view, how can we support them in terms of what we were talking about with their mental health, their well-being, giving them stable contracts, but also in terms of this kind of CPD element. Can you explore that a little bit for us as to why that's there and how you feel that that's going to support the researchers?
Yes, so I think it's really interesting the way that you phrase it, this idea that we're not just taking from researchers but we're giving to them as well, and just kind of reflecting back on that idea of the fixed term contract. In some instances, a fixed term contract or a short period of employment as a postdoc can be really beneficial.
Of course, yeah.
It can be a learning opportunity. It can be an opportunity to test out whether an academic career is for you or not, or just an opportunity to further your own curiosity as something you've started in your PhD and you're not quite done with it yet and you're not quite sure where to go next, even though you don't aspire to long-term be a PI. So I think for me, what would be really positive is if we get to a place, before the life of this current Concordat ends, where all of that exploration and development and the moving between sectors and between different types of jobs within a university is valued and is visible and is important. And I think the 10 days is a really important step towards giving researchers permission and opportunities to be explorative, to test, use a postdoc as a testing out, and if it's not something for you, use it as a springboard to something that's a much better fit, because an academic career is not for everybody, and that's a really good thing. But if lots of people get a chance to kind of pass through it, hopefully with all of the improvements in kind of making the right environment, making the right employment conditions so that those people most suited can stay if they want to stay, and giving this lots of tasters of other things, everybody finds their best fit, and that's better for research and better for the individuals.
Absolutely, it's that kind of holistic picture, isn't it? So when you say they're testing out different things, what are those different things? What could they be? What does that look like?
Well, there are no hard and fast rules yet on what the 10 days might look like, but it really could span such a range of things. It could be doing some teaching or doing some committee work, or doing some supervision, kind of academic training, if you like. It could be it doesn't have to be 10 days spread out. Make them all into a block and do a 2-week placement somewhere. It's a little bit, use your imagination and think about different arenas, different kinds of skills, different experiences, and alongside that, taking the opportunity to reflect on those skills that you're developing, even if all of the work you do is, teaching and committee work and marking and so on, that skills that you develop there will be easily transportable to other kinds of jobs, in the public sector, in the private sector, in charities. Every organisation needs innovative people with leadership skills who are, creative and critical thinkers. So, researchers are imaginative people.
Absolutely.
So I look forward to seeing what people use the 10 days for.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
So do I. That's interesting. That it aligns to some of the conversations we're having here around technicians and allowing technicians to have sort of protected development days regardless of contract or contract length. So some of those conversations we're having around development, we're trying to say it doesn't have to be a course by X, Y, Z. It could be a short-term skill swap in terms of a week's secondment into this lab where you'll learn this piece of machinery, etc. Some of the skills you can then take back. Some reciprocal arrangements happening, hopefully with friendly PIs, etc. I think those are things that we're talking about. So there's some synergies there, isn't there, with the technicians' commitments? Do you want to elaborate on those synergies at all?
Yeah, there are synergies, and one of the kind of processes that the Concordat went through, there was a lot of drafting and a lot of different input through reviews and through consultations, and it's come to a point where really the core definition of the Concordat is about research staff, as in individuals who are primarily employed to conduct research. But the definition allows for flexibility by a university or research institute to bring in as many different kinds of people into that definition as they want to. So any institution can essentially make its own definition. As long as it includes research staff, it can be research staff plus PhDs if they wanted to, plus technicians, plus teaching fellows. So there's many other groups who might benefit from the Concordat, either formally or informally, just because the practice of professional development starts to be better embedded.
Yeah, and that comes back to that culture piece. It's around changing the culture of that work and of the institution, essentially. So. Just on while we're on that, can you? And I don't want to try and sort of force you to speak for your employer or anything like that. But what do you think Vitae's aspirations for the manner in which the Concordat will be embedded within institutional culture?
That's a tricky one. Having not consulted with the rest of Vitae, but I think at the very least. We hope and expect that universities will sign up. Yeah. I think that's the first important step.
Have you got a sense of whether universities are going to... Have you had any feedback from the sector in terms of... even out on social media, there's a lot of excitement around it.
Oh, yes. Even before it was published, we... our role at Vitae is providing secretariat support to the Concordat strategy group. So we perform some administration and so on, and even before the Concordat was published, we were getting inundated with requests of when is it coming, when can we figure out what we need to do to meet it. So far there are 15 signatories who are primarily funders, because they form the main group of the Concordat strategy group. But we expect over the next coming months universities will be starting to kind of digest what it means to be a signatory, what's contained within the new document, and start thinking about how they can possibly implement it, and signing obviously being the starting point of that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Katie. Well, this has been really, really interesting. So thank you for your time. The way we try and end the podcast is by giving our listeners a couple of hints or tips just to take away to kind of reflect on their own personal practice. So I was just wondering if you had a couple of kind of tips for research staff, kind of standouts from the Concordat that they could go away and reflect on, and maybe a couple of kind of hints or tips for managers of research staff, again for them to reflect on. So kind of the things that hit you in terms of the Concordat that you'd like to leave people with.
For research staff, I hope that one thing that they'll notice and take away is that this isn't a long and difficult document to read. A lot of effort has gone into making it concise, making it logically structured, hopefully making it relevant to people, because it's so important that all of the stakeholders are aware of what it contains, but most importantly, researchers themselves. They're the ultimate beneficiaries, and there is a certain responsibility on them to make their voice heard and to hold the institutions and the funders to account. But more importantly, I suppose I'd like researchers to take notice of what's going on beyond the pages of the document. So through representation, through the monitoring and governance through their institutions, there will be opportunities for researchers to participate, to take a place on a committee, to respond to a survey, to just go on the organisation website and view their action plan. So if we're going to make progress, researchers do need to shoulder their part of the responsibility and pay attention and engage with these opportunities.
Brilliant. And then in terms of managers, what are your kind of take-home messages for them?
So for managers, I think the Concordat recognises that managers can have a strong influence, and this can be for better or for worse on the experiences of their individual researchers. So again, I think encouraging managers to be familiar with the expectations is ultimately important, but then taking some time to reflect on how they can use this as a springboard to positively influence the culture around them, I think we'll all win if that happens.
Brilliant. Great.
Thank you for your time, Katie. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Well, it was lovely meeting Katie and hearing about the new Concordat. It seems that it's started to address some of the key discussions and challenges that have been raised within the sector for a number of years now. I particularly liked what she was talking about in terms of how the Concordat is trying to address the mental health, the well-being of our researchers, thinking about the impact that these insecure contracts can have and trying to address some of that. For me, that's really, really important.
Yeah, and one of the challenges that I picked up on one of the things that has been addressed is that development time. So now obviously there's that statement in the Concordat that says researchers will have 10 days professional development pro rata, which is a really important thing, and it's something that aligns, like I said in the conversation, it really does align with the work that the technicians do, and it's something that a lot of universities are grappling with at the moment. How do we give that development time to these important groups that are achieving so much? So yeah, it was great to hear that's one of the recommendations in there.
There's obviously lots for us to reflect on there in terms of an institution at institutional level, also for managers, for researchers themselves, for academics. If you want to think a little bit further about this, we've added some additional resources onto our website. So if you go to www.liverpool.ac.uk/the-academy, on there there'll be a link to the podcast and some additional resources that you may want to check out to further your reflections. Let us know what you thought about our conversation with Katie today. You can tweet us at Live Uni Academy and feedback to us some of your thoughts about this interesting topic.
Yeah, and if you can please rate, review and subscribe in iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts from, that'd be really helpful. Thanks very much.